Welcome to the Startup of the Year podcast, where each episode we showcase exciting new companies from around the world. This podcast is produced by Established, creators of the Startup of the Year program. Established is focused on helping organizations with their innovation, startup, and communication strategies.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Startup of the Year podcast. I'm Frank Gruber, the co-CEO of Established. On this episode, I'm talking to Stephanie Lampkin. She's the founder and CEO of Blendoor. She won our Startup of the Year competition in 2015 out in sunny Las Vegas. With Blendoor, job candidates are sourced from hundreds of strategic partners and universities and presented to recruiters without name, photo, or dates. So in doing so, helping provide a unbiased experience when hiring. And before we get started, though, with our interview with Stephanie, she'll be joining us shortly, I wanted to share some segments with our team. So we've got these different segments jumping in, and today we've got some tips and tricks from Rich Maloy, who's with Established Ventures. He's going to give the VC Minute with some tips about how to communicate better with investors. Take it away, Rich.
Quick advice to help startup founders fundraise better. Let's talk about building relationships before you raise. There's a famous startup maxim, lines, not dots. Mark Suster wrote this on his blog in November 2010. That's nearly 10 years ago, and it's just as true today as it was then. When you and I meet, I have one data point, a dot. The next time we meet and I get an update, I have two dots, and now I can draw a line. Mark's blog post, which we'll share in the show notes, plots this on a simple graph as performance over time. And the more dots on that graph, the more confident I feel in the direction of that line. As you meet potential investors, your goal with the first meeting isn't to close the deal. It's for the investor and you both to get a data point on each other, that first dot. After this meeting, keep your potential investors updated with a regular email. I've received these updates as frequently as weekly, too frequent, by the way, to quarterly. At a minimum, you should have 4 sections in this update: the good news, the bad news, the thank yous, and the ask. If you're sending regular email updates, a potential investor has multiple dots to start drawing a line. And when you have your next meeting, they can then confidently draw that line up and to the right in a positive direction. That's all for the VC Minute. Back to you, Frank.
Thanks, Rich. Next up, we've got our Director of Strategic Operations, John Guidos. He's going to share some pitch deck pointers, sharing some insights about components to include in that pitch deck when going out to pitch investors or customers or whatnot. Take it away, John.
Thank you, Frank. Today I want to talk to everybody about some key elements for your pitch decks. The first thing you want to include are some high-level summary slides, and I'll go through specifically what those should look like here in a second. But I want to also emphasize that you should try to use a professional graphic designer, whether it be a personal friend or someone you can hire. I recognize budgets are limited when you are first starting out with your company. However, a nice visualization throughout your deck will be of the utmost importance to demonstrating to potential investors that you're the real deal and you all are professionals. Next, I want to emphasize that you should start out with your elevator pitch, which can very quickly and succinctly explain to viewers your idea, basically. And I think it was Guy Kawasaki who provided some guidelines for pitch decks, and he stated that you want to keep your deck no longer than 10 slides. You should be able to talk through the idea in the pitch deck in no longer than 20 minutes, and you should use no less than 30-point font. So that's usually a good format to start out when making your pitch deck. Next, you definitely want to include a slide that explains the problem that you are solving, and then you need to follow that up with your product or service and showing that it solves the problem that you had identified. It's also a good idea to include a demo if possible. Next, you're going to want to work through your marketing strategy and also explain how you intend to make money. What is your fee structure? Is it B2C, B2B, B2C, etc.? Next, in your pitch deck, you want to emphasize your team. Pedigree is very important when starting out. As most people know, investors are most likely to invest in either a product and service that they think is novel and will really help provide a solution to those problems, or they're going to invest in a team that may not necessarily have all the answers at the beginning, but have the capacity to figure things out as they iterate and move along. The next thing you want to incorporate are financials and projections, which we all know are very important. I specifically want to talk about metrics and the fact that you need to make the data digestible and so that it can be visualized by the audience, which is generally investors. You're also going to want to talk about the total addressable market and therein the market opportunity, so that you can work backwards with your metrics and understand what the potential revenue is for your company. And lastly, I wanted to emphasize, when you're pitching your deck to investors, you need to deliver with some excitement. And as they say, ABC, always be closing. And so at the very end, you want to set some firm follow-up and action items so that you can circle back and potentially land that big investment. And that's all I have today for pitch deck pointers. Now back to you, Frank.
All right. Thanks so much, team. Great insights. Hopefully you found those helpful. But I've got one more thing. And I've been thinking about this a lot because 2020 has just been a dumpster fire for in so many reasons and in so many ways. So I wanted to maybe share a little bit of insight about how to stay positive in this tough time and, really focus on that, because there's so much out there that can be negative, that could be looked at as, things that'll bring you down and maybe sink your company. And you can obviously hem and haw all day about it. But really, in order to be successful, you're going to have to start focusing on the positive, and that's where you'll end up. If you think about it, like if you focused only on the negative, you're going to probably, be drawn to it and drawn to whatever conclusion that you've been thinking might happen. So it's really important for you to think about, okay, where do I want to go, and how do I get there, and really focus on thinking positively about every little next step to get there. So if you're trying to get investment, and it's the pandemic, and there's some issue with maybe connecting with people, it can be harder, but at the end of the day, people are sitting in their desks probably a little bit more than they would be, or sitting at home a little bit more than they would be if there wasn't something like this going on. So I think the focus here would be try to connect with people, try to connect with more people. If you've only pitched, let's say 10 investors and you've gotten all no's, well, you haven't pitched enough. There's probably another 90 something people you could probably connect with and pitch with and get feedback. And it only takes one yes to get that company going. So I think the key here is just focus on the positive. Wayne Gretzky has a great quote, pretty well-known quote. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you got to get out there and take more shots and focus on the fact that you're out there doing it, and not so much the feedback, because ultimately if you keep going and you don't give up, you're going to end up finding your way. I mean, it's really, really hard to beat somebody that doesn't give up. In fact, I'd say you'll probably be undefeated if you don't give up. So keep going, don't give up, stay positive, keep your head up, and keep doing it. Hopefully you found that helpful in this tough year, and maybe these insights will be something that can guide you on your journey. All right, now I'm going to share something we've been up to. So if you've been following along, we've been doing these pitch events online as we lead up to our annual summit. It's our 8th annual Start of the Year Summit coming up in November. It'll be online this year, which will be a little different. We had it in Memphis last year, and it was great. But this year, we're going to bring it online due to the global pandemic, and it'll be different, but I think it'll be great. So I'm really excited about what's happening November 16th through 18th. So mark your calendar, November 16th through 18th, and you can go to summit.startupofyear.com to sign up and get more information about the summit. We'd love to have you join us. What's going to be happening is we've got 100 startups that have been vetted down from the Start of the Year competition. So some have been fast tracks from the events that we've been having leading up to the event, the big summit. Others will be kind of pooled through our judging process, and we'll have 100 stars from all over the country, from all different backgrounds, pitching for a chance to be Startup of the Year. There's an opportunity for a company to get $20,000 in investment from Established Ventures, which is really exciting for a company there, and obviously other prizes and exposure and an opportunity to connect with a number of investors along the way. We try to do a lot of that connecting through curated matchmaking, where we'll be connecting some of the startups with the different investors that are there. But as an attendee, you can come and try to directly connect with them as well. There'll be talks, which will be different than last year. We didn't have a lot of talks. Years prior, we've had a lot of different speakers, noteworthy speakers come through. This year, we've got Tim Draper from Draper VC and Draper University, as well as Kara Golden, who's the founder and CEO of Hint Water, as well as the author of a new book called Undaunted. So those are just a couple names coming through, and we're excited to have them. There's going to be others as well, and a lot of opportunities to ask questions to investors and corporates, and we'll have some Ask Me Anything sessions with different investors. It'll be a lot of fun. So you're going to definitely want to sign up and be a part of it. Mark that calendar. Something new this year, though, is we're actually highlighting veteran founders with our partner .us. So we've got the .us Veteran Startup of the Year category this year, and we're basically they're giving away a $10,000 non-dilutive cash prize to a founder of, which for a company founded by a U.S. veteran, spouse, or dependent. So that's super exciting. Obviously, we really appreciate what veterans have done for this country, and we want to be able to shine a light on some of this great work they're doing post being in the service, or now that they're out, as well as some of their spouses or dependents. So exciting stuff. Really excited about that component. It's new this year, and working with .us has been great. They've even offered an opportunity to give anybody listening, actually, or that comes to the summit, an opportunity to get a free domain, a .us domain. So if you've got a great idea out there and you want to get it started, maybe you want to use it as a link shortener to shorten your domain or whatnot, you can do that. We did that. So we have established.us, and then we have est.us. We've got both of them. We use one for our email and one for our website, and you can do that same kind of thing. Obviously not with Established, we already got that one, but some other companies that use it are zoom.us and others out there. So if you go to soty.link/.us plus, you can go sign up for that link for that domain and get started right away. So just a nice little perk for working with a partner like .us. And if, like I mentioned earlier, go sign up for that summit. It's coming up here soon, November 16th through 18th. It should be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. All right, now let's start catching up with Stephanie Lampkin from Blendoor. Stephanie, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So can you give us a little bit of an update, and maybe explain for listeners what Blendoor is, and that way we kind of get a baseline, and then we can dive in.
Yeah, so Blendoor is an enterprise software company that mitigates unconscious bias in hiring and retaining a diverse workforce. Started the company in 2015, as you mentioned, in response to a lot of companies looking for solutions to increase the number of women and underrepresented minorities in their workforces.
That makes sense. And then what's the business model? How do you make money from users, I guess?
Typical enterprise SaaS B2B model, we charge a subscription fee for monthly or annual access to the platform.
Great. And I think last we spoke was a long time ago, but can you give us kind of an update on some of the partners you've been working with? And I mean, you've had some really notable companies that you've been working with for, I assume, a while. Can you give us just an update?
Yeah, pretty big companies, Salesforce, Amazon, Intuit. We've worked with close to 250 companies now in various aspects of they're giving them access to recruiting tools, or our relatively new index called BlendScore, which started off as a side project of mine, sort of a customer acquisition tool, and it's now turned into a very high in demand product where we analyze your company's overall diversity, equity, and inclusion across hundreds of different metrics and publicly available informations to give you basically a score and a ranking for how well you are creating an inclusive workforce. So it's kind of like a good starting point for a lot of the companies that come across our desk. Because much like anything else, the first step is admitting that you have a problem, and then really pinpointing where your gaps and weaknesses are.
Wow, that's really interesting. And, I'm just thinking from my old TechCo media days and beyond, like, that's something you should put out there free and like just let people know, like, here's your score.
Oh,
and
yeah,
maybe you
is.
should it is? Okay, great. That's amazing. So it's kind of like the, Forbes list or Fortune or Inc. list or whatever of scores, I assume.
Exactly.
Oh.
We're hoping that it will have that level of like credibility of like a U.S. News World Report ranking where you can just kind of vet company cultures. Because my thesis is a culture that's good for marginalized groups is probably good for everybody else. I'm pretty sure there's a correlation between diversity and company culture.
Definitely. Yes. All right. So just so, the folks that are listening, can you just walk us through, like, if I'm an Amazon or I guess our company Established, I wanted to use this product, what would the user experience look like, or how does it work? I'd come to you and say, hey, I want to use this. What do I do?
Yeah. So you can sign up. We have a Know Your BlendScore product that we start where we give you an assessment and access to like this Credit Karma like tool where you can see your score and get recommendations. Included in those recommendations are access to our recruiting tools where it's kind of where we started, where a company, let's say Amazon, has a recruiter, goes in, posts jobs, or we can connect with your applicant tracking system to surface candidates out of our database of over 1 million diverse professionals to match with whatever jobs that you currently are advertising on the platform. You view those candidates without name, photo, or age. You're only seeing how well they match the skills and requirements of the job. And once you decide to move forward with any of the candidates on the platform, you can continue forward with your applicant tracking system or whatever are the next steps in your hiring process.
Okay, great. Can you tell us a little bit more? So, this year, racial justice has been a, focus for the year aside from COVID. I'm curious how that's impacted you guys as you're doing something to kind of help shine a light on the fact that there's, definitely needs to be more diversity in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's there's definitely been an increased demand. We've seen this over the past 5 years, actually. They're just spikes that happen based on major events, whether it's Me Too or BLM or, any sort of event that could be highlighting the severity of some of our social challenges. So we've definitely seen an uptick in the number of demo requests and requests for information about the product. And we're just trying to identify the most effective ways that we can build solutions that scale. Because a lot of people, I think, are looking to have like racial justice training or unconscious bias training. And there's sufficient evidence that those things don't actually change behavior. So it's been quite a task iterating on products and designs to really hit on the core problems that are related to unconscious bias.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think when you pitched, you were based in New York. You're based in San Francisco now, correct?
Yeah, we're headquartered in San Francisco.
Okay, that makes sense. And have you, obviously you've raised some capital with Blendoor. Can you share a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, so just over the past 5 years, we've raised 1.2 million, which is, in the grand scheme of startup life, 5 years, 1.2 million is relatively small, but that actually makes me only one of 40 Black women in the world to ever raise over $1 million in venture capital. So there's a study called Project Diane that found that of the hundreds of billions of dollars in venture capital that get dispensed every year, about 0.0006% of that goes to Black female-led companies.
Wow.
So it's definitely been an uphill battle.
Wait, say that number again. That was 0.0006%?
Yes, that's correct.
That is terrible.
And actually, the majority of that just went to one founder, Julia Collins of Zoom Pizza. She was able to raise $325 million from SoftBank. The rest of us are just kind of getting pennies here and there. So, it's challenging, but it turns out to yield some positive, natural selection benefits, in that the investors that I do have are so supportive and just hardworking and patient in ways that I don't think would be the case had I received investment from a much larger, well-known, reputable VC. We've gotten some institutional investors like Elevate Capital and Backstage Capital. But yeah, I think I'm in the right place and on the right side of history when it comes to where we are with the venture capital industry. Yep.
And how about, tell us a little bit more about anything that you're working on right now, like the latest products. So you talked about the index. Share anything else that you've been working on.
Well, outside of Blendoor, I started a network called Visible Figures, so kind of a play on the movie Hidden Figures. I collected all the Black female founders of venture-backed tech companies. So there are only 104 little, I call it our own little good old girls network. We host a series of private roundtables, events, access to, opportunities. And it's just grown exponentially. And now we're formalizing it in a way where folks who are looking for diverse suppliers, board members, new hires, you name it, can tap into this network as well.
That's awesome. Visible Figures. Is that what you called it?
Yep, Visible Figures. You
Is
can check out you can check out our landing page, visiblefigures.com.
Excellent. All right, that's really cool. I love that you've got this side thing that's helping people. It's amazing. All right, so can you tell us about your experience working with Start of the Year program and what that was like?
It was 100% positive. Like, I'm always verbally supporting Startup of the Year. I actually coached another startup that won, I think, a couple years later. It's the salon rental company.
Share, yes.
Share, yes. So I've just been a big fan. And I think in a lot of ways, the process helped me really hone my pitch. As a founder, you know that like 90% of your time is pitching investors, pitching clients, pitching new hires. And so just really like honing the art of the pitch. Also, you guys gave me a free photo shoot as a part of being a contestant. And I still to this day use those pictures. As a matter of fact, I can send you, if you check out MIT latest Ideas to Matter, they cartoonized, if that's a word, the photo that was taken at my Startup of the Year. So yeah, it's yielded a lot of positive things, I'd say, in 5 years. Yeah.
That's great. All right. So back then we didn't have our Established Ventures, which is basically an SPV. Obviously we started the year after you. So now we're basically working and trying to find interesting companies to help with investment as well. So you just missed it by a year, unfortunately, but we hope that, as you continue to with your journey, you'll be able to come back to us as we continue to build out that arm of what we're doing.
Sure.
So let's talk about some startup do's and don'ts. Or do you have any startup do's and don'ts that you like to share that you usually share with founders?
Yeah, I'd say startup do's are, even though it's really tough to just get out and network, relationships matter. And especially within your domain, like don't go overboard with the conferences and trade shows. Try to be a bit more targeted and strategic and getting access to the places and spaces where the industry leaders are, but definitely prioritize building those relationships. And then startup don'ts. I think the salesy model of fishing with a net when you're fundraising is kind of going out of style. VCs have so much deal flow now, they get so much attention that they want to feel like you've done some homework and that what you're pitching to them is actually relevant, and sort of what their investment thesis is, and it just makes sense. So I would say, figure out a way to find the investors in your space that are people that you really want to work with. They say it's closer than a marriage, and I think that's becoming more and more the case over time.
All right, so let's dive into some advice on companies that you mentioned earlier about funds, right? Like there's lack of funds, especially for minorities, women, people of color. Maybe can you talk about some advice on growth plans if there's a lack of funds, let's say?
Yeah, so I was really successful in winning pitch competitions. Obviously, I'd say at least a quarter of the amount of money that we raised was just through non-dilutive pitch competitions or similar type programs. So look for non-dilutive capital. And then secondly, I'd say double down on just revenue opportunities. Like I think sometimes you can be so laser focused, particularly if you're in software, on building the product, and which can be quite costly, when there could be opportunities to generate revenue either through public speaking or consulting, or that also aren't a complete distraction from the business. I don't want to recommend that you just have a whole different side hustle for public speaking, but there are ways in which you can manage sort of consulting side gig if need be to just, keep the lights on.
That's great advice. Find a way to make it happen, especially, we didn't talk as much about it, but, obviously we've been experiencing a pandemic. Wanted to hear how that maybe has impacted you, or, and if there's anything that you've, kind of gleaned from it.
Yeah, we were hit really, really hard in March and April because of hiring freezes. So I had to scale the team back quite a bit. But then George Floyd was killed, and Ahmaud Arbery, and all of these sorts of events that led to kind of an increased consciousness about the problems that Blendoor seeks to address. And so we did see quite a bit of surge in demand. And so now I'm trying to kind of rebuild from there. But, in a lot of ways, COVID has been beneficial because it slowed things down, kind of gave us an opportunity to reevaluate what we were doing and what was sustainable. But on the other hand, it's been quite taxing on the team. But in the end, I'm pretty hopeful that we'll come out of it on a better foot than we were pre-COVID.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely gives people a lot more, we're not traveling. That alone is takes up a lot of time and effort. And, obviously without that in itself, it kind of gives you a little bit more time back. All right, let's talk about kind of your motivation and maybe some of your mentors. Who are some of your mentors that you kind of look to?
So I have my own sort of personal board of directors / mentors. These are just people in various aspects of business, venture capital, et cetera, that have kind of already made it, broken through a few glass ceilings that I often just reach out to whenever I'm stuck on a really hard problem. And then I would say folks that I don't know personally that I just kind of look up to and try to mirror are, Melody Hobson. She's the president of Ariel Investments here in Chicago. And of course, she's well known for marrying George Lucas, but I think she's been a strong inspiration. Ursula Burns, she was the former CEO of Xerox, first Black female CEO of a Fortune 500 tech company ever. And Serena Williams inspires me a lot too. I wouldn't call her a mentor per se, but I think, internally I have a group of folks that I keep close in terms of mentorship. And then, I just try to expose myself to as many amazing people who've broken down doors to help keep me going.
That's great. And speaking of this kind of goes in line with it. So you've been pushing this company ahead. Can you share some of your habits or maybe rituals to kind of that you go through to kind of innovate or find innovation?
So this is actually what that MIT article was about, ideas made to matter. They asked, just kind of what my creative process is like. I'm a big crowdsourcer for ideas and feedback and signals. Meaning I just try to talk with as many people as possible who are relevant and look for patterns, look for signals that can validate if I'm on the right path. And then, much like we do with product, just put things out there and optimize and iterate. So that's kind of how my process is. I try not to be too insular in thinking that I have the best ideas and what I'm doing is an accurate solution versus just looking for as much feedback as I can.
That makes sense. All right. And then how do you stay, productive in what you're doing? You've been doing this for 5 years, and I know I ran a company for 10 plus. How do you continue to keep energized about it?
Good question. I live a relatively balanced life in terms of work and play. So I go to things like Trinidad Carnival every year. I try to travel to new places at least a couple times a year just for new experiences and exposure. But it is really hard. Avoiding burnout is really hard. I think I have just mastered the art of identifying what activities bring me the most joy and sense of fulfillment and do my best to prioritize making it happen.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you do it on a regular level or every day? Are there things you do, or is it more bursts? Curious.
Usually once a month, I try to do something where I'm just kind of taken out of my element. And obviously during COVID, it's had to be a bit more local. So it could just be a camping trip, a little day picnic somewhere, a hiking trip, just something to just kind of step out of the slog a bit and, get a breath of fresh air.
Okay, so let's share some maybe some ways that people could get in contact with you, if there's anything else you wanted to share about Blendoor and what you're up to.
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm super active there. Stephanie Lampkin, you can follow me or email me slampkin@blendoor.com. I'm also on Twitter, but I would say LinkedIn for sure is my most active medium.
All right. Hit her up on LinkedIn if you want to connect. Anything coming down the pipe here for Blendoor that you wanted to share that we didn't talk about?
We have a new platform coming out called Blendoor X. It's a networking platform for VP level and above professionals of color. So if you are VP level and above or looking to get access to VP level and above talent, sign up on blendoor.com/BlendoorX.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Really appreciate you taking the time, and it's great to catch up. I can't believe time flies. It's been 5 years since you won Startup of the Year, and sounds like you're doing great and continue to move forward with your product and obviously some side projects too, which are really cool. Thank you again for being here and for doing what you do. All right, so we're starting to get at that point where we're going to be wrapping up here in a second. But before we do, I wanted to let you know, if you have a startup idea and you want to get it going, today is the best day to get it started. Not tomorrow, not the next day. Get it today, get it out there, and get it in the world, and continue to iterate. All right, till next time, I'm Frank Gruber, signing off. Stay safe out there, be well, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Startup of the Year podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll be back with another episode soon.